Welcome to the CareSmarts 360 On Air podcast, which is a home care podcast. I'm Mike Palladino, an account executive here at CareSmarts, and very happy to speak with Ryan here today. The best feature, of private home care is that it entails personalized care with the comfort within one's home. This form of care represents a fundamental shift in the way aging and caregiving are perceived, emphasizing autonomy and dignity for seniors. As private home care services are tailored to individual needs, these foster deeper connections between caregivers and seniors, promoting emotional well-being alongside physical health. Further to that, by enabling seniors to age in familiar surroundings, these services reduce the stress and disruption often associated with relocation. They empower seniors to maintain independence and a sense of control over their lives, contributing to overall happiness and quality of life. So it wouldn't be wrong to say that this way of caregiving has revolutionized the way that we care for the elderly today. Now, today I'm also very excited as we have the CEO of Minute Women Home Care, Ryan McEniff. Hopefully I pronounced that right. On the panel today, Ryan has been handling the reins at Minute Women Home Care for more than 12 years now. And as far as home care services are concerned, there's no stopping Ryan. Welcome to the show, Ryan. Great to have you online today.
Thanks for having me on the show, Mike.
Amazing. Love it. So, Ryan, I guess we'll just dive right in. I do have a couple of questions for you. We'd love to garner your expertise and your feedback based on your years of experience in our ever-changing industry. And I'm sure over the last 12 years, you've seen a lot of shifts. So, love to ask a few questions and get your feedback on how others can follow suit and follow in your footsteps. So,
Sure.
Ryan, the first question I have for you today is, how do you see private home care services reshaping the narrative around aging and elder care?
Well, I think private home care is um, it's an interesting industry, and it can be very state to state. In Massachusetts, we don't have any regulations in home care, which is kind of surprising to many people, considering the politics of this state, and the people call Massachusetts Taxachusetts and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, while other states have more stringent requirements and regulations around being a home care company. And I think, at least in Massachusetts, but to all home care companies, we're in a field in which generally families don't see us very often, meaning like the office staff, the CEO, they don't see the office very often. We don't have to be on Main Street like a real estate or a bank has to be. And so the folks that they interact with are the caregivers. And that at the end of the day is, the face of the company. And where I think home care companies need to all do a better job, myself included, and constantly trying to improve our business is to elevate our standards without government needing to tell us to do that. And I don't mean that politically. It should be intrinsic as a company owner that your standards want to be as high as humanly possible. And then that way, if there are government regulations, you are already exceeding those by leaps and bounds. And
Yeah.
typically a book that I never read, but I listened to his podcast. He's a productivity guru called Cal Newport. He wrote a book when he was in college or shortly out of college called "So Good They Can't Ignore You," which basically it kind of summarizes what it's about. Just focus on one thing, be the best at that, and the prizes, the accolades, the speaking, the money, that will all follow doing a really good
Oh,
job at
yeah.
one specific thing. And I think if we do that, we will be, revolutionizing and improving the care delivery that we're providing. Because at the end of the day, families want to keep their loved ones at home. Most seniors want to stay at home in the house that
Yeah.
they've been in for decades,
Yep.
and nobody has on their wish list to be moving into a nursing home, right? So, maybe an assisted living's okay and is a compromise, if you will, and not that
Yep.
assisted livings are bad, but I would be willing to put money on that the vast majority of people, when you ask them at 60 years old, where do you want to be when you're 80? Right
Yeah,
where I'm at right now,
at
enjoying
home.
my own house that I worked hard
Yeah.
for.
Absolutely. And it's something that I think we're seeing more and more, Ryan. Just as a quick example, not to get too off topic, I have a 95-year-old grandfather. My grandmother passed away a few years ago, 93 years old. Now, rest her soul. She was a lovely woman and had a lovely life. But he, very stubborn, I'm Italian background. He came straight from Italy, immigrated here, very stubborn. I am not going anywhere but my house. I work too hard. I'm going to stay here until I pass on. As such, he's elder, right? He needs care, he needs somebody to keep an eye on him and monitor him. And we were able to find an amazing agency to work with to make sure that he has all the needs that he requires, even somebody that speaks Italian. So it's something that is very personal to him, and allows him to be comfortable in the later stages of his life. Now, we've also seen the flip side of that coin through COVID and how much of a struggle long-term care facilities were in separating families, people not having the care they need because of short staff, right? So I think more and more, to your point, private duty home care, private home care in general, is something that we're going to see more and more people emphasize, right? And I think I'm a good example of that. We wanted to keep them at home too, right?
Yeah, and I'm not here to pitch this, but I also am the president of a company called Well Aware Care. And the reason I bring that up isn't any hard sell, but part of the reason I was part of that company and am part of that company is because what they do is ambient technology, passive patient monitoring
Yeah,
systems. And I think that, and the reason I got involved in that company and passionate about it, whether you use Well Aware Care or the competitors that are out there, is that as the rising costs of caregiving continues to go up, the lack of caregivers that are in this country right now, there's just not enough to go around.
yeah,
And that because of that supply and demand, they get more and more expensive every single year. I think home care companies over the next 5 to 10 years, let's say, or maybe even sooner, kind of revolutionize senior care and what you were talking about, be open to new technology that can
yeah,
come in here and provide some level of a safety net for seniors that
yep,
caregivers don't necessarily have to be there for. And, if somebody is needing 12 hours a day, but they can't afford the other 12 hours a day, you're not going to get that business. You're not losing business because of that. You're actually sustaining your business because you put some type of technology in there that will alert family members or the agency themselves when something bad happens in the home.
yeah.
So I think that's kind of the next logical step with home care
Oh
companies.
yeah.
Again, getting away from my affiliation is technology being in the home to be able to fill that gap for people that can't afford it or don't necessarily
Absolutely.
need it right now or can't afford 24 hours a day of care.
Amazing comment and point, because I think, even over the past 5 years, like the technology advancements we've seen is just insane. I go to conferences every year. I go like three, four, five on a good year. And two things I'm seeing very prevalent is caregiver retention. We know attrition's at like an all-time high. So that's something to focus on. And how do we keep people and get more people in the industry, right? That's a burning platform and will be probably for the next 25, 30 years, if not more. But the things that we can help bridge the gap is technology. And us as a technology platform, we try to be more revolutionary as well with AI-based information, caregiver retention-based dashboards saying, hey, who's able to be a champion, who's not very loyal, who's likely to churn, like these types of things. It's just predictive analytics that allow agencies to do their jobs better. But also, to your point, technology is going to also help support those that need the care, be more cost effective and be more as needed and less like, just sending somebody out there that's going to drive cost, right? So I think there's an amazing opportunity for all types of technology, and we should be welcoming it because it's only going to make our lives in the industry easier, right?
Yeah, and I would kind of volley it to the, I imagine agency owners are going to be listening to this podcast often. And think about it, think about the days when Care Smarts or your competitors, the cloud-based scheduling CRM services didn't exist. Like, would
Yeah.
you want to go back to pen and paper and a notebook that you have to carry around? And when somebody's on call, they have to carry a binder with them all the
Yeah.
time? No, of course not. It made life so much more simpler, able to work from home, work remotely. You can still go on a vacation. And yeah, if a disaster happens, you can still log in and triage if
Absolutely.
need be. Look at it through that lens of how easy it's made running an agency owner's life
Yeah.
and the employees in that. And that's the same mentality that people should have with other technologies that could come in to the space and help out with that, because you're going to be able to provide better services in general, even without no, like one of the things that I've always been cognizant about is that we've gotten referrals from, sorry if I'm going on a tangent, but
No, that's
I can
okay.
talk.
This is good. Yeah,
Um,
same.
but when we've got, we might take the full 45.
Yeah.
Uh, but when we get referrals from assisted livings, often those referrals from assisted livings would be that somebody fell or injured themselves. Assisted living doesn't really know, went to an emergency room for a few days, and now they just need like somebody to watch mom or dad to
Yeah.
let them know like what's going on. And I always felt very, I always was cognizant, I should say, of saying, hey, listen, you're depending on an agency that you're paying money to let you know whether or not you need that agency. Like there's a conflict of interest
Yeah.
intrinsically in that conversation. And it was, kind of it was what they had to do. And of course, we were honest when we thought they could step down and when they didn't need our services anymore. But imagine you have technology in there that can let you know that without having any conflicts of interest. What's going on at night? What's going on in the morning? What's and these various different things. And I'm, as you can tell, I'm excited to see what that landscape is going to be in general and how technology comes into home care and senior care as a whole, because, our businesses, even though they're different, are focused on doing something that's is kind of antiquated. It's
Yeah.
hands-on care. There
Yep.
isn't like, Tesla's now driving around on their own, for better or for worse. All
Yeah.
these things have changed so dramatically. But at the end of the day, our business is scheduling a person to go out and provide in-person care.
Yeah.
And technology has creeped in different forms, but it hasn't hit the nail on the head with how is care delivery going to be changed by a technology. And that's
Yeah.
going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next 10, 20 years, however long it
Yeah.
takes, maybe 2 years, who knows?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the funny thing. It's like for all intents and purposes, it could be sooner than we all expect it. It probably won't be, but the way technology goes today, we just never know. But I love everything that you're saying, Ryan, because it hits so close to home. Because at the end of the day, whether we're on the technology side, whether we're on the agency side, we all share the common interest and common goal of how can we increase care outcomes and make people comfortable at home, receive the services they need that are tailored and fact-based. That's, I think, really the important thing that we all try to accomplish on both sides of the coin. And I've seen a lot of harmony among software vendors. Like there's so many, EMRs or CMR platforms out there that you can utilize. Hopefully, CareSmarts is looked at as one of the better ones. We think we are. Obviously, everyone has opinions, but we strive to make our technology more modern, more supportive, more accessible, so that when agencies need to use us, they get what they need without a thought. And that's really the main premise of us making it easier, whether it's technology used as a CMR or EMR or physical technology out in the field. So that's I love that. No tangents allowed here, Ryan. But I know you and I can probably, like you said, talk all
Well,
day.
but and there have been failures. Like I remember thinking when I heard about Honor, right, where they tried to Uberize home care,
Yeah,
and I said to whoever, I said I might be the typewriter salesman saying, "Don't worry about this computer thing that's going on." But I was like, I think it's a little bit more complicated than just pressing a couple buttons and somebody shows up and everything goes according to plan. And of course, we saw what happened with Honor, that they
yeah,
basically took their money, bought home instead, and they went back to the old model to try to get their
yeah,
investors returns on their investment because things weren't going well. So it's and I'm not trying to trash on Honor. I thought, obviously would have affected my business, but there is difficulties in doing this. It's not as simple as can be, and
yeah.
that's what's interesting to see what's going to actually get through the cracks and be able to resonate with families, resonate with seniors, and be able to work out in the long run with adding technology into things. And I think it's an exciting time.
Yeah. Well, the last point before we go to the next question I'll make on that is I think the intentions were actually very good. I think the execution was a bit of a miss. Because I think in theory it makes sense what they were trying to do, but yeah, to your point, There's a lot more things. It's not just as cut and dry as like, oh, schedule somebody and here's all the criteria. And it's like there's a vetting process. There's a personal approach that needs to be paramount when you're providing home care services. The trust factor, right? Like somebody that just, let's say, gets an appointment, somebody random goes to the house to take care of them. Are they going to really share everything with that person they've just met, right? Or are they more likely to be more open with somebody they've worked with for many years or for an extended period of time, right? And you can't really replace that human element in home care, and that's never going to go away. So that's where I think the big challenge was with Honor. But who knows? Maybe in the future there's something that helps bridge the gap, but doesn't necessarily replace the human element because the consistency element, because that honestly is what helps agencies scale. Word of mouth marketing, word of mouth referrals. That's the strongest form of growth, right? Do a great job, people are likely to say something to someone else.
Absolutely. And I'm sure there's going to be somebody out there that cracks that nut, right?
Yeah,
Eventually it will happen. And but like anything, and to defend Honor a little bit, the person that blasts through the wall first always gets the bloodiest, right? Like you're the one that's
yeah,
trying to forge a new path, and you're going to get the thorns and you're going to get the cuts and the bruises trying to do it. And so they
yeah,
took their shot. It didn't work out as well. And I'm sure somebody's going to learn from that and improve. And there will be the next iteration of
yep.
that idea.
Oh yeah, I'm fairly confident we'll see that again, probably sooner than we think. But like you said, someone's got to do it, someone's got to learn, and usually the companies that are most successful are the second and third movers because they've seen what didn't work and they adapt. But yeah, so the next question, Ryan, just to kind of keep on track, is in what ways do private home care services personalize the caregiving experience for seniors, and how does this contribute to overall well-being in your mind?
Yeah. I mean, um, again, going back to my experiences being in Massachusetts, I can't speak to somebody in Virginia or Kansas or wherever, but in Massachusetts, and I imagine it's not much different, is that I was at a chamber event once, and there was an assisted living executive director at that event as well. The executive director of the chamber introduced the two of us because we're in the same business, and she, matter of frankly, basically said, "It doesn't matter if I use Minute Women because." If you do a bad job and I fire you, you just send out, I go to ABC or XYZ Home Care and you send me the same care, just with a different name tag. The very caregivers that I fired you over are going to come back with a different agency. And that hurt the ego a little bit, but it was brutal honesty that I appreciated because it made me think, hey, listen, uh, this if what she's saying is what others are thinking and not saying directly to my face. And I'm also like 6'6", so it's not like I'm the least intimidating guy in the world either. And so, I look at it as when you're trying to provide that personalized care, you really need to spend time on the front end to have less better outcomes, excuse me, on the back end. And my point with Massachusetts is that right now, with no regulation, you can go online, register an LLC, get a business card and a brochure and a website for probably under $1,000, and you can look
Wow.
dang professional. And
Mhm.
so it is on the onus is on us as owners and agency owners to differentiate ourselves in some manner, which then disseminates down through word of mouth and through uh, customer referrals. And part of that is really getting to know the clients that we're working with and
Yep.
spending time with them um, and doing training on the caregivers and not just sending a caregiver uh, a Word document or an email that has, two paragraphs about what this person needs and, ADLs, bathing,
Yep.
cleaning, X, Y, and Z. You need to spend time with your caregiver to make sure that
Yeah.
they understand exactly what they're walking into. That will give you good outcomes with your caregivers. It will give you good outcomes with your clients. Your
Yep.
caregivers will feel supported. Your clients will be happy. Your caregiver may say, hey, listen, this is not the case for me because you mentioned that they have 3 cats in the house and I'm deathly allergic to cats. And all right, great. So
Exactly.
we didn't just send somebody out there that's going to walk out of the house within 10 minutes. And I bring that example up because we've made that mistake,
Yeah.
like it happens. And what we've learned over a decade plus, if new agencies are listening, is do the due diligence up front, spend the time with the assessment, get to
Yeah.
know the family, talk with them, and then try to find the right caregiver and the best caregiver for that situation. And
Yeah.
we have a saying at Men and Women that is fill the case for quality, worry about the money later. The old
Yeah.
Bill Belichick being from Massachusetts, the
Yeah.
best ability is availability, right? So the
Yes.
person needs to have the ability to get to the case, but then from there, we want the best person possible match for that situation to be able to go out to that shift. And if that means we're paying a little bit more money, if that means that we got to cover an Uber charge to get things going, don't to see the forest through the trees here. Like,
Yeah.
this is going to be worth the while of making sure things go well. I mean,
Yeah.
when you look at cases, any case, it doesn't matter. Where are the two weak spots? The two weak spots are when the start of new care, right? That first week or two, maybe up to a month, where they're getting
Mhm.
used to people coming in, the different faces, everybody's getting used to everybody else. And then when there's a last minute fill in. And so, you want to make sure that when those weak spots come up, and they're going to come up, it's a guarantee
Yeah.
that you take the time and you have the processes in place to be able to inform that caregiver so that they can have the best possible outcome.
Yeah.
And spending a little bit of extra money to make sure that the shift goes well is going to make the client happy. The business is going to have a client for longer, which means
Yeah.
more revenue and all of those great things. So
Amazing.
I look at it as doing it up front and get an assessment that's more than just, even in cares. I'm not as familiar with CareSmart as other ones, but you know, they all have assessments, and that's great. But you can also add to that assessment. You
Oh
can
yeah.
add to it if there's certain things that you say, hey, listen, no, nobody's perfect, no software is perfect, and so if you want to add a couple things to it, that's never going to hurt, right? So,
No,
um,
exactly.
and I'm not trying to, I'm not trying to say anything negatively about anything, but I'm just saying, hey, listen, do the due diligence up front, spend the time, get the information, spend an extra half an hour with the family or 45
Mhm.
minutes, make them feel comfortable with everything, educate them, let them ask questions, don't have it be a transaction, and then you will have
Yeah.
information to support your caregivers and to do a good job.
I think that's the best way to put it. And I naturally am a finance guy. That's what I studied in school. I like numbers. I implement that usually in my day-to-day life and also my work career. But I always look at the long term, the LTV value of a client or a person, right? Maybe at the start, like you mentioned, maybe your profit margins aren't as high because you spent a little extra to make sure the right person was going there. You're paying them a bit more because it's a challenging client, but you've now had that client on board for 3, 4, 5 years, and then you start to realize those margins even further because they're getting amazing care. They're willing to pay a bit more to have that level of comfort and ease, like at a sight of the mind, ease of the mind, right? And the other thing that you mentioned was something that I talk about almost every single day, and it's via the assessments. It's caregiver matching. How do you ensure you're assigning the best possible fit to work with an individual based on that specific criteria, which we would capture in an assessment. Things like restrictions. Do they have pets? Are they allergic to pets? Do we have an allergy to pets and dogs at the caregiver level? These are things that, just from the CareSmarts perspective, we evaluate. And when we suggest, hey, this person can go and fill this appointment, the individuals you see fit the attributes and criteria and don't have any restrictions in place. Maybe it's smoking, non-smoking, allergies, right? And these are some of the predictive things we're trying to do to make it easier for agencies like and individuals like you when it comes to staffing, especially with somebody new, right? So I think it's such a great way to think about it, and you know, more and more as we advance our technology and others in the industry get better, that level of flexibility and information is going to just be super important, not only for agencies that have been doing it for a long time, but startups, new agencies that are trying to figure it out. They need that info, right? Because they don't know where to look otherwise, which is no, a really good way to position it. I love your thoughts on that, by the way. Now, the next question, Ryan, I wanted to ask you as we go through, can you, leading on the technology side, can you discuss any innovative technologies or approaches that private home care agencies are utilizing to enhance quality of care for seniors?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to where in my mastermind groups that I use, there are a number of agencies that are looking at that passive patient monitoring systems. Not necessarily always well-aware care. There could be competitors out there. Sensi AI is a competitor. But that is something that I know a lot of the other agencies I interact with are looking at. And you know, the I think in the past the aversion to a lot of these types of technologies in the home, PERS devices, they're essentially no out-of-pocket costs, but they need to be used, they need to be utilized, and then um, people don't really like cameras. I mean, where falls happen, or where you're spending a lot of time in the bathroom, in the bedroom, where you're naked, where you're going to the bathroom, and the last thing, you know, a senior wants and their adult child wants is to see somebody in a compromised position like that. And so I think that that is going to kind of be the next step where technology can go. And it's fascinating the stuff that's out there. I mean, I'm going to be on a national aging in place. It's a nonprofit I'm part of, and there's a company called Kanza that has a smart toilet seat so that when you sit down,
Oh,
it measures your heart rate. And so, you know, then your brain starts thinking about like, what are the other sensors they could put in there? Because people are going to the bathroom, they're using the toilet seat every single day, sometimes
yeah,
multiple times a day,
multiple.
depending
Yeah.
on male, female. And, you know, what are the types of things that you can get from something that's non-invasive that somebody's going to use no matter what, that they don't have to learn the technology and are already incorporating it, and you're just changing out the type of toilet seat that's on there. And so I don't know if they'll be successful, but that's where I think technology is going to go, where it's going to be devices that people are used to using, or that they don't have to specifically wear for a specific purpose, that they're sitting down on a toilet seat, they're laying down on a bed, and you put a smart pad under the bed, things like that that will be able to
Yeah.
tell you quite a lot.
Yeah, I love that, right? Because I personally didn't even know about this toilet that could, measure your heart rate. But think about it. Somebody who is, a senior or elderly, having a bed or a toilet that can monitor these things, give us these predictive analytics. All that does is allow us to better support them and send somebody there if we notice something, or make sure we're
Sure.
adjusting how frequently we're going to work with them, or maybe there's appointments we should be looking at scheduling for them for a medical visit or something like that, right? That is indicative of what's been going on with them. And technology, again, we can talk about this till we're both probably blue in the face, which we probably would if we weren't on a schedule. It's technology is exciting. It's there to help us, and we're only going to see it make hopefully our lives as agencies or owners or caregivers just a bit easier to know that we're really focused on what that person needs. Because the better the care is provided, the more likely that person or that clients can be retained, and the longer time you're going to have with them, they're going to speak nicely about you, tell their friends or families of friends about the great experience, and they're going to come to you, right? And that's ultimately what you want, right? So,
And to bring it back to I I call you CRMs, but I know you call it what's
EMR, I
your
think, is
that
EMR,
yeah,
EHR,
EMRs.
yeah.
You know, that's an interesting, to bring it back to agencies. That's going to be an interesting place to see what kind of technology. I'm sure you experience that there is pain switching from one platform to another. You
Oh
get
yeah.
used to the warts and all of one platform, and
Mhm.
to switch over to that, that means that, hey, some things are going to improve and some things may not be what you are used to from the previous platform. And I think the innovation on these platforms are going to be interesting on how AI is brought into that. Does that make scheduling different? Does it say, hey, listen, based off your criteria and based off of this person's open availability, AI is going to automatically put somebody in here and send out a
Mm,
notification that your shift is available. I mean, there's definitely a lot of technology that can come through vendors like yourself that
yeah,
are going to make it easier to schedule. And the easier it is to schedule and the more automated that is, the more cost savings it is for folks in agencies, so
exactly.
that they don't need that third scheduler. Maybe two schedulers can handle what three could.
Yep.
And certainly, um, we're seeing that at least the reasoning behind a lot of that in the tech layoffs the past 4 or 5 months, the reason or the excuse that they're giving is that they think AI is at a point where they can replace a lot of these jobs and they're
Yeah.
becoming obsolete. We'll see. I don't know what it is, but that's at least what they're telling Wall Street. And you know, that that I guess that technology is far closer to being on the cusp of being involved in our everyday life than I think many of us realize. And it's
I
already
agree.
here for a
Yeah.
lot of companies.
Well, you look at, not to go off on a tangent, but you look at Chat GPT, or these new AI open source open AI programs where you could literally, I was showing my fiance this not too long ago. I was like, she's a nurse now. She's an RN. She works in the ER, soon to be an NP. Now I'm like, go to Chat, because she was not familiar with it as all. She kind of is resistant to technology a little bit, right? Whereas I'm like guns blazing. I'm learning everything new, every new tech gadget and toy. So I'm like, go to ChatGPT and type in any medical diagnosis or anything that you would typically see in the ER and see what it spits back at you. And she's like, okay. She types in something to do with like a heart condition, and it gave her all the details of everything she could possibly need to know, how to treat it, how to manage it. Now, mind you, you need to look through it, make sure it's accurate, but it's 90 to 95% of the way there. And, it's just crazy to see how these things are impacting our everyday lives. She's also a clinical instructor. And I'm like, I almost guarantee you all your students are going and writing their papers about their shifts in this Chat GPT, and they're just sending it to you directly. And she's like, well, you know what? I didn't have this when I was in school, but it is crazy to think about how easy technology is making that aspect of things. And now we know with technology, it moves at a rapid pace, quicker and quicker and quicker. When we see it in home care, what we see today and what's normalized will probably be super different in 2 to 3 years from now, right? And that's, I think,
Yeah.
the best thing we should all look for from an agency perspective or a technology perspective is being adaptable, because that change in behavior, we were doing it manually and paper-based 10 years ago, 5 years ago even. Now we got technology in 5 more years. Like you said, maybe there's AI-based scheduling that can say this caregiver is available to go here. They've already worked with them with 3 hours. They're 10 miles away. Boom, they're going, right? Because they've indicated
Well, here,
availability.
for your listeners, I'll give them a tidbit of what we're using ChatGPT for. Um, I'm not the most eloquent speaker. I'm not the best writer in the world. So I will let's say every agency owner every single year has to deal with the sending out the email notifying clients of a rate increase, right? That's always a tough email to send because you're worried that they're going to go ballistic, or you're going to hurt your relationship with them, or worst case scenario, they leave.
Yeah.
um, Write in your Word document or in your Gmail what you would write, copy it, throw it into Chat GPT and say, I want you to rewrite this with compassion and warmth and understanding, and press enter. And it will spit out in
Yeah.
seconds a, a email that you would have probably, one, never been able to write, and two, even if you could write that email as well as they'll spit it out, you would have spent an hour and a half on it, because
Yeah.
getting the words on the paper doesn't take the time. You get the message out. It's massaging those words so that it has the right
Exactly.
impact that you're looking for. And you can literally in ChatGPT give me 7 different versions of this email to choose from, and then it spits it out, and it makes your that will save you time. That will help you with your communications a little bit better. And then obviously when people get on the phone with me or listen to me on a podcast, they realize that I am not as eloquent as I seem in an email, but it's a time saver right there, and it
Yeah,
also helps you with
absolutely.
your relationship with your customers.
Yeah. Well, it's an amazing point, and everyone should be leveraged. The thing is, technology is there for us to utilize, and if we're not using it, I had this conversation with a marketer in the industry, and how they use automation to save time and focus more on business growth activities and less efforts on like the other monotonous tasks, right? And technology's there. You got to find out how to use it most effectively for your business. What works well for you might not work well for somebody else, but it's just finding out what that happy medium is for you. And like you said, if I use this for the same thing, by the way. I might write a long email. I'm like, I want to make sure the message is there, but maybe I want to massage it a bit differently. I do the same thing. Why wouldn't you? It's there for us to use. It's only going to help us get better. Now, that's a double-edged sword, because we know with AI, especially in our roles here as salespeople or in tech, remains to be seen how that's going to look in 10 years. But I always think the human element is going to be impactful, maybe at a lesser scale. But I think in any industry, human element is important. And that is directly related again to home care, right? That personalized touch.
Absolutely.
Great. So these insights are just fantastic, by the way. This is such a lovely conversation. And I know that everyone that tunes into this is going to definitely have a lot of takeaways. The next question for you, Ryan. It actually relates to challenges. What challenges do private home care services face in terms of accessibility, affordability, and how can these barriers be addressed to ensure equitable access for all seniors in our space?
Well, I mean, equitable access is kind of a catchy term these days of what's equitable. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think private home care is equitable whatsoever because we're essentially catering services to those that have the means to be able to pay privately for essentially what is one-on-one care. You know,
Yeah.
somebody's coming to the home and catering to nearly all your needs. And at the end of the day, the vast majority of people in this country cannot afford to do that.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at government programs that try to do these things, where the difficulty comes is that usually people that are looking at government programs are usually getting low hours. And that means caregivers aren't as interested in those cases because they want 8, 10, 12, 16-hour shifts. They want
Hmm.
big old shifts, which if you were in a caregiver's position, you probably want that too.
Absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and so then you're dealing with getting inconsistent care, continuity is very low, which then leads to just customer service issues or dissatisfaction in the delivery care model that they're getting. So how do you handle the class issues? I don't know. I don't know how. That's a conversation for somebody much smarter and more eloquently speaking that has chat GPT in their head. But at the end of the day, all you can do is try to provide the best care that you can for the clients that can afford your care. And like we were talking about before, that's where I think technology will be able to come in and breach that gap. Is one-on-one care always going to be needed? I think so because technology is not at the Jetsons yet, where you can have a to the chagrin of Boston Dynamics trying to make those robots. It's not
Yeah.
here yet. But you still need somebody to help you go to the bathroom, make your meals and things like that. But there is going to be more and more technology that provides that safety net.
Mhm.
And so how to make that equitable, I don't know because we're catering to those that have the means to be able to pay for these types of services.
Hmm. Yeah, I think you make a fair point, right? Because as a private duty or private equity home care company, that is your audience. You are catering to those that can afford it, and we do the same thing with my grandfather. Very fortunate to know he has 4 or 5, I guess 5 kids now supporting himself, right? So he's able to go ahead and get what he needs, and he's 95. He's worked his whole life. He's got savings, right? That's not the case for everybody. So I think there needs to be, and this is again, as you mentioned, it's at a state level, it's at a federal level, figuring out how we can better fund programs for those that need the care. Because just because somebody doesn't able that still have the means to afford it, doesn't mean they shouldn't get those care services. But the caveat to that right now is that Medicaid, Medicare, mainly Medicaid, it's largely underfunded or they don't pay as much, so the caregivers can't earn as much, the shifts are shorter. So the caregiver largely wants to work at a private duty home care because they get to make more money, have longer shifts, and it's honestly you're working better services because it's more one-on-one, whereas not one to many, right? So it is a double-edged sword. It's a tough thing to solve for, but hopefully, over the next and again, state by state, it's different. What's different? What happens in Massachusetts is different than what happens in California. It's different than what's happening in New York, right? So it's everything is different everywhere. And I think if we can maybe streamline some things as best we can, it could make it a bit easier to just understand where those true gaps are. Because right now it seems like it's all over the place, right?
Yeah, I mean, using an example down in Rhode Island, and I know they were trying to pass this in legislation in Massachusetts was, I forget the name of the law, but it was like a home modification grant, where if they would match you like 5,000, maybe 10,000, but I think it was $5,000. So you put in 5 grand, the state puts in 5 grand, and you can use that money to modify your home to age in place more safely.
Hmm.
And it's those types of programs that I think make a lot of sense because you're going to pay one way or another. And
Yeah.
if you are able to pay to have grab bars installed, have those wrought iron railings outside of homes
Yep.
reinstalled because they've been rusted after 30 years,
Yeah.
in improve somebody for a low cost money. I mean, grab bars are cheap, installation is cheap. and
Yeah.
various other ways that you can improve somebody's home. I mean, all you have to do is prevent one fall, and you've made your money, because
Yeah.
just the ER visit alone and the ambulance ride and all of
Oh,
that, and
exactly. Yeah.
even if it's a 24-hour turnaround, right? So um, that's not to say if somebody really has a bad fall and there's a contusion or there's a broken bone or whatever it is, there's strictly the cost, not the human suffering, but the cost that's involved in that is tremendous.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that person is probably, their baseline is going to permanently be changed for the worse, and they're going to then need to lean more on the healthcare system for
Yeah.
various reasons. So, I think when you look at those types of things, it is definitely, and I've said it a few times, but the forest through the trees of saying, hey, listen, a little bit of preventative maintenance, right? Like, hey, listen, nobody likes paying to have the roof reshingled, but it's a hell of a lot better than having a massive flood and having
Flood or leak. Yeah.
$150,000 worth of damages, right? And so that preventative measures, and I think that's the problem we have in general, and not to be on a soapbox, but what we see, and I'm probably guilty of this too, we're all guilty, is that we're not proactive, we're reactive in these situations. And usually when you're reactive, it's been too late. And then all of a
Yeah.
sudden you're trying to put toothpaste back in the bottle, and that's very difficult, if not impossible to do.
Yeah.
And going back to your point with those government programs is that, um, and it trickles down to private home care. How do I quantify how many falls I've prevented? Well, it's really hard to do that,
Yeah.
because you don't know what the future would have looked like if you didn't have 24-hour care or 12 or whatever care
Exactly.
you get.
Yeah.
But that is the mentality we need to have, especially as the baby boomer generation is getting older and older, and they're really, my dad's at the beginning of the baby boomer situation, generation, and he's 76, so he's the front kind of line of when he's starting to need care, and you
Yeah.
have millions of people behind him that are just lining up saying,
Oh,
hey,
yeah.
get ready.
It's gonna be, I talk about this often when I'm doing a demo or doing a talk or a podcast, right? Where is it's almost like the calm before the storm, because that generation, like you said, it's at that tipping point where they're 5, 3, maybe I would say 3, 5, maybe 7, 8 years removed from largely needing assistance and living at home or an ALP or an LTC facility, right? So I think that we haven't really scratched that surface yet. We're thinking about it, but we don't know the impact, because the boomer generation is just massive. There's so many people, right, that are going to be now transitioned into some sort of aging at home care service type or in a facility, right? That's just really what's going to be. And our country's massive, so there's a lot of people here, and there's going to be definitely, I think, a big need for services like that you provide or many other agencies across the country. It's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, only time will tell. I think we're a little bit past the point of no return. I mean, the way the wheels of government turn so slowly, it's probably past a miracle. It's probably like, hey, we're on the roller coaster. We're about to
Yeah,
start the first descent,
yeah.
and all you can do is hang on and try to enjoy the ride.
That's a great analogy. It's like we've been slow climbing for years, and it's like at the very top, we're like, "Oh, I don't have my seatbelt on. We're gonna go down the hill." But
Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy the loopy loops and
yeah,
the
just hanging on to the
360s and
bars to
everything, and
go
just
through.
hold on.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's funny. Well, Ryan, this has been a great conversation. I got one final question for you, then I'll free you back to your day. But the last one I wanted to ask you, Ryan, is can you share a real life example that illustrates the impact of private home care on a senior's life and their families as well?
I mean, yeah, I mean, Minute Women's been in business for 50 plus years now. So we've got a couple of those. Where the one that jumps out to mind is that there was a gentleman that we ended up caring for, who had a very nasty fall, and he loved the Red Sox, and he loved sitting out on the deck of his assisted living. And we got a very nice note from the family, and he was one of those many individuals that the family started using us because dad fell, and they needed to see kind of where his baseline was. So they were only going to use us for a week or two. And like many of the situations, a week or two turns into a month or two, turns into 6 months, 8 months,
Yeah.
because the realization that dad's not bouncing back as quickly as he once would have. And the family was just over the moon that we were able to keep him in his home, and be able to allow him to still watch the Red Sox, talk about
Yeah.
the Red Sox with fellow residents during the nice, spring and summer and fall months. Obviously, the fall big for baseball. Be
Oh,
able to
yeah.
spend time out on that deck of the assisted living and enjoy things. And he got strong enough that they ended up, we call it graduating from services, not needing us anymore. And it was, just a nice thank you card that we received, to be able to do that. And any agency, if you're in business long enough, we frame all of our thank you cards, and it isn't meant to
Amazing.
be like enshrining how great we are, but this is a tough business to be in, and some days you question why the heck you're in this
Yeah.
business. Why can't I sell like sell widgets that don't talk back, they don't show up late, they don't make you go bald, all these things. And you just need a reminder to say, hey, there was a lot of good that we did, right?
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's not meant to be a shrine of how great we are, but more of a reminder of saying, hey, listen, we are doing a good thing. We're getting paid to help people. That's a good profession to be in. And
Absolutely.
it makes the days a little bit more bearable on the
Yeah.
tough days. And then on the good days, obviously you get to sit there and say, hey, today was a good day. We helped a lot of
Yeah.
people and we did a lot of good.
Love it. And the highs are high, the lows are low in this industry. And it is something that can be tough, right? Especially if you're working with seniors or the elderly, people pass on, you build connections. There's a lot of, potential sadness that comes in the nature of how we work and who we work with. But that said, the outcomes and the positive impacts that we're able to make on these lives and reassure families or make them comfortable, make them, allow them rather to keep doing the things they love, like watching the Red Sox play. I'm a Jays fan, so obviously I'm not a big Red Sox guy, but the
I
point
won't hold it
stands.
against you.
It's all good. But the point stands where it's just making people comfortable, and that is such an amazing experience. And I learned that firsthand from my mother being a nurse for 35 plus years. My fiance has been a nurse now for 7 years. Before that was in long-term care, and I see it. The bad days are bad, but it's challenging, it's tough, but the good days is really what is the biggest motivation, and I see that with them all the time. And I'm sure you see that every day as well. So
Yeah,
honestly,
absolutely.
it's
It's always and it allows you to remember why you're doing all of this.
yeah,
Like, I think most agency owners have I find even your girlfriend, your fiance, your wife, whoever it was, as a nurse, usually people in the healthcare world get into it because of a personal experience. And,
yeah,
you know, I always thought like, just being frank, and I don't care that it's recorded. I always thought that like values of companies were it was just a big crock. It was all just stuff on a website that didn't really matter. Somebody came with marketing basically.
yeah,
And over time, I realized how important those values were. And over the years, I sat down and I said, hey, listen, what are our values? And our biggest value was dignity. And we like dignity because dignity is a form of respect. We can use that for our clients. We can use it for our coworkers. We can use it for field staff who are coworkers as well. Everybody needs to show dignity and respect to one another. And I got into this because my mom died from cancer, and my aunt was at the funeral. We got talking. I had always wanted to be a business owner. I had seen 24-hour home care, and that's how I got introduced to all this. And
yeah,
I remember my mom having cancer everywhere in her body and saying, it is just, it stinks to die, but everybody's got to die. But, this cancer's got to rob you of your dignity as well.
mm,
And you think about that, and you think about people with dementia, living with dementia. You think about other chronic diseases that, whether it's CHF or it's COPD, those things that don't allow you to age gracefully or as gracefully as you were hoping you to do, or like my mom said, she was needing total care near the end. And those are the things that you bring with you when you're running an agency, and you remember, hey, listen, I went through this as well. Would this be acceptable? Is this acceptable? Is that acceptable? And if the answer is
yeah,
yes, great. And if the answer is no, we're all going to face those situations, and you need to spend your time fixing those things.
yeah,
And that's kind of where I kind of will leave it off with you is that, think about those values, think about those things that are important to you, your past experiences, and bring them into your company, and then, um, live up to them.
Yeah.
Have them be part of the processes, have them be reminded every single time. It's not just words on a website. It's not just marketing, because if you don't, then it is just marketing. So
Yeah.
it's something that you need to think about, and it goes back to the reasons why we get involved in this, and having the good days and the bad days.
Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously very sorry to hear about your mother and the struggles that she had. But that level of motivation, I think, is what sets those like yourself up for success in those industry or in this industry, right? And I think similar sentiment that motivated me, and this is the last thing I'll say before we let you go. Um, for me, my motivation to get into the technology side of home care was seeing my mother being a nurse, doing home care case management, home care, healthcare, and hospice as a case manager and coordinator at an agency for 35 years. She did it when in her time it was all paper-based and manual. So I saw the hours, the long hours, the charting at nighttime before bed, or getting caught up on work that was just piling up, right? And at an agency, people just wear many hats. There's so much to do at all times, especially when there's no technology. So for me, I saw that my whole childhood growing up. And as soon as I got older, I saw the industry basically growing and becoming more technologically savvy and focused. That's what motivated me to get into the software side of it. Because like I'm not somebody who's going to be a clinician or go out there and do the practical work. But if I can help on the tech side, which I am very good at, that's where I can make my impact, right? So it's always cool to hear the stories that motivate everyone to get into our industry. I think, like you said, most people that are in the home care, healthcare, hospice industry have a reason that motivated them, and I think that's why our industry is so awesome. And I hope that technology can help us level up even further.
No, absolutely. That's a great reasoning for your why.
Yeah, awesome. Well, Ryan, this has been fantastic. I want to thank you for your time and sparing your precious time, even giving me a bit extra today, which is amazing. You've shared some wonderful insights, and I'm sure the audiences that tune in are going to find them useful and helpful as well in guiding them. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. And until our next episode, this is Mike signing off.